Hello everyone, and I'm Matthew, and today we are going to be examining the question, what is ethics? Now this is just going to be an introductory look at the overall idea or concept of ethics, the general branch of philosophy known as ethics, because as we discussed in the intro philosophy video, ethics is one of the main philosophical branches that we have and study still currently today. In this video, we're going to look at the overall field of study. We're not going to look at specific ethical theories. We're not going to look at their problems or even specific ethical examples. We'll save that for later videos later on down the line. Instead, what we're going to do here is we're going to define ethics. We're going to define morality and meta-ethics. We're going to look at the difference between theoretical ethics and applied ethics. And then we are going to look at how we can analyze ethics in the world around us through, popular culture and just living. Here we go. Oh, I still don't have an intro, so this is... Hi! So, ethics. What is it? Well, ethics, by definition, is known as the study of morality, and morality is the concept of good, bad, right, wrong, just, or unjust behaviors. So, ethics is the study of what's good and what's bad, what's right and what's wrong, and what's just and what's unjust. That's ethics. So, most of us probably already knew that. To study ethics is to study the idea of good and bad. It's to study the idea of good and evil, of justice and injustice. Injustice. I know words well. I do smart think. Injustice. In the study of ethics, we study not just ethical theory, the idea of how we can be good, because that's what it boils down to. The study of morality is the study of how we can be good people. And this is why we create a number of different ethical theories, things like egoism, utilitarianism, deontology, and virtue ethics. All of these things tell us how to be good people. That is one of the main aspects of ethics. But also under ethics, we have why we should care about being good people. And this is kind of our little side note for right now, but this is what is known as meta-ethics. And meta-ethics is the why. So if ethics is the how we can be good people, meta-ethics is the why should I care? Why should I care about being a good person? Ethics tells me that I should be a good person by acting in a way that is focused on my self-interest, or by focusing on the greater good, or by fulfilling a natural moral duty. It's telling me how to be a good person. Meta-ethics is telling me why I should care. Why should I care that I punched the old lady on the side of the street? Why should I care if I commit murder? Why should I care if I lie? This is meta-ethics. It tells us why we should give a damn. And so meta-ethics, by definition, is the examination of the foundations and origins of morality. So while ethics tells us how to be a good person, meta-ethics tells me why I should even care. So examples of meta-ethical origins would be, the idea of God, or heaven or hell, or the idea that it's a natural law. I have a natural moral duty. Or because we created it, that we decided and determined. We subjectively created morality, and we made it important. That's why we should care about being a good person. But under meta-ethics, you also have things like free will and determinism. Do I actually have free will, or are all of my actions predetermined? If this is the case, then do my moral actions still matter? This is all what falls under meta-ethics, and we'll explore this all at a different point in time in the future. Now, getting us back on track, we're going to look at what is known as both theoretical and applied ethics. Now, I really make this distinction in a lot of my classes because, a lot of the time when you take an ethics course, we tend to just go, all right, you're going to learn ethics, and here are some theories, and now you got to apply them to these real-life situations. But I think it actually helps for us to separate the theoretical and the applied, at least initially, so that we can understand the difference between the two. And the reason I think this is because, in my experience teaching, a lot of students get really caught up on the detail of, well, no, this is how the theory works. It always has to work this way. It always has to be X, Y, and Z to the letter. And while that is true, in essence, you should want your ethical theory to be able to work to the letter. Sometimes it doesn't, and it can't. So the difference between theoretical and applied ethics, I liken to cooking. Theoretical ethics is your recipe. It's the instructions, it's the step-by-step process that you need to follow to make good moral decisions. Applied ethics is your actual kitchen and attempt at cooking the thing in the directions. So let's say, for example, you are supposed to make grandma's spaghetti sauce. Grandma has a recipe that you are supposed to follow to the letter to make her spaghetti sauce. And you have it, and you can follow it, and you know it, and you see it, and you can read all the directions really well, and you understand it very, very well. You can read it and go, yes, reading this recipe will make a very delicious spaghetti sauce that I have grown up with my entire life. And if I follow the directions, it'll be perfect. You then go to cook. Grandma has a gas stove. You have an electric stove. That's a difference. In cooking, that can change things. That can change cooking times. You don't have accurate measuring cups. She has spoons and cups and everything. You just have tablespoons, and you have to figure it out. You have to try to convert it. She uses San Marzano tomatoes, and you just use tomatoes that you grew in your garden. All of these things make a difference in taste and in quality of the overall spaghetti sauce. When it comes to ethics, it's a very similar thing. When studying utilitarianism, for example, utilitarianism gives you a very specific set of directions. You need to make sure that X, Y, and Z criteria are met to make an accurate moral choice under utilitarianism. However, in the real world situation that you are in, it might not be possible to meet X, Y, and Z. And so because of that, we have to ask, how do I adapt utilitarianism to that situation? So when we study theoretical ethics, we are studying the recipe. We're studying the perfect version of this theory. If it was in a vacuum, if we could control all of the factors, and if everything worked exactly as it was supposed to work, then the theory would apply as such. So if you were able to make grandma's spaghetti sauce in grandma's kitchen with grandma's ingredients and grandma's utensils, and you could follow the recipe to the letter, it should turn out perfect. Unfortunately, life doesn't work that way, especially in ethics. And so this is where applied ethics comes in. Applied ethics takes the theoretical, it takes the recipe, and allows for us to utilize it in a way that is now real world. It's now practical. It allows for us to tweak the ingredients a little bit to fit. So yes, you have tomatoes from the garden as opposed to San Marzano, but in doing so, we know that we need to add a little bit of sweetness or a little bit of seasoning to allow for it to fit in the way that we need it to fit. So utilitarianism, may fit perfectly theoretically. It might not fit perfectly in applied or applicably. So we need to now tweak it just to fit a little bit. And this is the same for all moral ethical theories. They all work perfectly in the theory. In the textbook, every moral theory is great. Every moral theory is perfect in the textbook. But moral theories have problems. Every single one has shortcomings. And so because of this, we have to know theoretically how they work and memorize the recipe so that when we get to applied ethics, we can adjust it accordingly and make it fit for the situation. And so this is why we study both theoretical ethics and applied ethics as defined in the class as such. Now, as a side note, when looking at theoretical ethics and then again in applied ethics, it's important to recognize that every decision you make, every choice that you perform, has three parts to it. There's the intention, the action, and the consequences. All three of these things are extremely important in figuring out where moral value is and how the moral theory works in ethics. Excuse me, my cat is doing things. So we concern ourselves very much with the intention, the action, and the consequences. And every moral theory utilizes these three things differently. It's my cat. Say hi again, Oliver. No? You're just gonna do your thing? Wait for it. Hello, my name is Oliver. I'm a cat. Alright, so what does this now mean for the idea of a universal ethical principle? Is there ever going to be a universal theory that covers everything? An ethical theory that is all-encompassing? This is debated. Some people think that it's possible with enough work. Some people don't. I'm in the latter. I don't tend to think that a universal ethical theory could really ever exist. Instead, I think we need to really recognize the shortcomings of particular theories and pick when some theories work and some theories don't. And this is where we get what is known as moral monism and moral pluralism. So, ignoring the idea of a universal ethical theory, we have what is known as moral monism and moral pluralism. A moral monist is someone who thinks that you should have one ethical theory, and that one ethical theory works and works well enough that it gets the job done 99% of the time. And when it doesn't get the job done, you still use it even if it is uncomfortable to use. Even though it might not be the best theory to use, it's ride or die. You use it. You're a moral monist. So, for example, I keep using utilitarianism, but for example, if you are a utilitarian and a moral monist, then that means you think utilitarianism is the theory, and you will use it in every situation, even though it doesn't fit every situation, and it's not necessarily the best theory for every situation. You think that it should still be the one that we use because you think it's the best theory. It might not apply the best, but overall it is the best theory, and so you're going to continue to use it, ride or die, no matter what. Even if it is uncomfortable, you're gonna use it. A moral pluralist, on the other hand, is someone who is similar. You know, they have a favored moral theory. They love utilitarianism. They think utilitarianism is the best ethical theory around. But a moral pluralist recognizes that sometimes it doesn't work. So 99% of the time, moral pluralists say that 99% of the time, utilitarianism will work, and it'll work great. But there is that small percentage, that like 1% of the time, that utilitarianism doesn't work. And so maybe in that moment, we don't use utilitarianism, and instead we use deontology. You know, deontology fits better. Utilitarianism could handle it, but it doesn't handle it in a way that we think is necessarily the best. Instead, deontology does. So we use deontology. There's my cat again. And so we use deontology. This is what a moral pluralist says. So a moral monist says that we should use the theory no matter what, all the time, ride or die, even if it's not the best. A moral pluralist says that we should use our moral theory the majority of the time. And sometimes it doesn't work the best, and if that's the case, we can make a choice to use a different moral theory in that instance. So 95, 96, 99% of the time, we'll always use our favored theory as a moral pluralist. But then there's that small percentage where we might use something else. Might. Not that you have to, but that you might use something else because it just fits better. It seems more moral in that moment. So what we've done so far today is we've looked at what ethics is in a nutshell. We've looked at its bare bones ideas. This cat's got the zoomies. But it's this idea of what is good, what is bad, what is right, what is wrong, what is just, and what is unjust. It's one's concept or beliefs of how to handle these types of behaviors in those moral situations. We've covered the idea of meta-ethics and why we should be good, just very briefly, because we'll come back to it in another video. But the big takeaway from today is this idea of theoretical versus applied ethics, and this idea of moral monism and moral pluralism. Hello, Oliver. Thank you for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed this lesson.